As you can tell from the title, this is Vancouver Every Expectation of the Demise of Justin Trudeau. And God, isn't it obvious though? So you're watching the House sessions, right? Trudeau and Poilievre facing off. That's well, that's got to be the best drama of in Canadian politics ever. You can't describe Canada's politics as boring anymore. Not with that guy in there, that idiot narcissist. You've got an idiot narcissist prime minister, and an opponent who really has a sense of humor and is a grounded, decent guy and doesn't mind rubbing Justin's nose in it a bit. And that's what's happening. Justin's just getting his nose rubbed in it. He's in so much trouble. He's in trouble all over the place. You have to watch this guy's garage committee hearings. In the committee hearings, you really get a sense of what's what. It takes a bit of effort, but I would say it's well worth it. Just this guy's garage, just his stuff, and then you'll find stuff from other people as well. But that's the guy I go to. And there's other people who, Clyde Do Something is a good one. I really like Clyde Do Something. Yeah, so those two, I think. You know, you get really a different sense of what's happening in Canadian politics from those two guys, I think. Really solid guys. So Trudeau's in the House of Parliament right now, and I just watched the last round. And I really get the sense that he's standing there, he's arguing for increasing the gas taxes because of the forest fires and other hurricanes and things like that we've experienced in Canada. He still thinks that Canada can affect the rate of climate change. Canada can't, you know. Canada can't really have much impact on that. Not just getting it out to market and using a lot of the revenue to build cities that are sustainable. Just build cities that don't need so much energy to stay warm or cool. We could have used, that's one of the things that money could have been spent on. You probably could have had massive insulation programs that could have gone out to people to insulate their homes. Just make Canada as clean as possible, right? And we wouldn't have been able to increase the supply that much to have that much of an impact on prices. So by doing that, we would have prevented money going from states that aren't particularly friendly to us, states that we would otherwise not want to associate with, when we could have been producing it ourselves. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. That's a huge mistake for Canada. Okay, so here we are, and they're talking about it's another 61 cents that he wants to add to every liter, which sounds to me like an awful lot. And he's being questioned about that, and he's talking about the forest fires and all of that. And at the same time, he starts talking about all the money that he's giving away. So he's giving money away for this, giving money away for that, and so that's kind of the lowest thing too, right? Yeah, I'm just gonna buy people off. I put them in a situation where they're paying too much in taxes and rent's too expensive and interest paid. Everything's too expensive. Now I'm gonna give you money to help you make it. And that he'll win a lot of votes like that. He's gonna offer it to people that need the payouts. Because they have to actually hand out quite a bit, right? Like the GST rebate, and there's a lot of ways that they can help out and do, I guess. But you would have been better off if they just let people keep their money in the first place. It's a better way to run a society. Because if you've got one group of people that seems to have too much, then you have to have a managerial class that takes the money from them and supposedly gives it to somebody else. Well, they take a big part of themselves just for the processing fee, right? Introduce all kinds of complexities and all kinds of corruption, I would imagine. Well, the whole thing is corrupt. The government is corrupt. You have to pay your taxes, and then they spend it on things that, you'd prefer that they didn't. So, Anyway, I'm predicting the demise of him. He's increasingly up for harsh criticism and mean jokes in the international media. You know, everybody's calling him a dictator and all that kind of stuff. I suspect they're kind of onto something, you know. Perhaps when we were talking about this, when I was talking about it, I've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years, that what a dictator he's becoming. He was becoming and did become. And I remember poo-pooing it myself. I didn't quite believe it was as bad as I was thinking or that some other people were saying. And now everybody's, you know, at least woken up a bit, right? Notice the humor. Yeah, I think people have woken up to totalitarianism of the woke. So, and he's King Woke. So it's a bad time for him. I would say that most good and intelligent people hate him at least a bit, you know, on some level. Probably mostly the people that voted for him because that's such an embarrassment now. I'd certainly be embarrassed if I ever voted for him. Sorry, but the first time, okay, but the second and third time, nah, you should feel embarrassed. And so now here we are, you know, it's the pride before the fall, right? It's the tragic scene. That's where he is right now. Polyev is making jokes about him today in the Parliament, saying that if he was chocolate, he'd eat himself. Like, you know, they make jokes about how narcissistic he is. And you know, this stuff is serious. He either actively conspired with the Chinese Communist Party to sway the election, or was complicit in its cover-up, or both, right? That's not a good thing for a prime minister, not at all. Canada's never seen anything like that. You can't say Canadian politics is boring anymore. That's for sure. I mean, this is absolutely brand new stuff. This has got to be the best drama in Canadian history. But I don't know anything about Canadian history, so. Yeah, but he did that. He let them get away with it. There's no question that he let them get away with it. Like, so it just makes you wonder, like, how low can he go? He paid an opioid epidemic connected consultancy firm $140 million for work that nobody can find. And that was a consultancy firm that's engaged in all kinds of notorious activity all over the world, including helping supercharge opioid sales. And Justin gave him $140 million for work nobody can find. By ignoring and insulting the truckers, he could, by their own reasoning, I'll say, have created a highly dangerous and violent circumstance, right? The truckers were called dangerous and violent, and they're parked right out in front. They look like they're there to stay. And so do you think that was a good tactic to ignore and insult them? Like, where's it say in a crowd control manual, you know, a good thing to do with protesters as motivated as that is ignore and insult them? If they had been as dangerous as the media like to portray them, and a lot of people like to have thought of them, that would have aroused them to violence. And in fact, there was no violence there. They didn't need the Emergencies Act. And the truckers were already moving out by the time they brought it in. And the Trudeau government looked at the plan that the police had, because the police and the truckers, you know, kind of knew each other by that time, right? And the police thought that they could just start slowly talking them out. And Trudeau said that was no plan at all. Well, no, that was a good plan. You didn't have to freeze bank accounts. You didn't have to create all that hostility and tension in the country. You could have just talked them out. And to any reasonable person, that would have been what you would have wanted. You'd want a peaceful resolution, right? But no, so he blew that. And he was just saved by the fact that the protesters were decent people, unlike himself. So then to look over the whole election interference thing, he hires David Johnson, and David Johnson does exactly the thing that I'm sorry, not the right thing. He does exactly the thing that we thought that he would do. And, you know, I think it's 75% of Canadians see a conflict of interest there. And, you know, they say there can't be a conflict of interest, or the perception of a conflict of interest, and there's the perception of the conflict of interest there. So it was the wrong thing to do. Trudeau shouldn't have offered it to him, and David Johnson shouldn't have taken it. There's not a chance that that made sense, because you're going to create a difficult circumstance. You do that, you know that everybody sees it that way, you do it anyway, well, you're creating conflict. The man is an idiot. Or an evil genius, I don't know which. Yeah, and he was elected by feminists. The more feminists you are, the more likely you're going to be to vote for him. I think even more than the NDP guy. And immigrants who don't know what an idiot he is. I think there's a lot of immigrants that come into Canada, they're just looking at the press from their own ethnic communities. And their ethnic communities are liberal. And so I don't think it's just the Chinese press. The Chinese press in Canada, we just handed it over to the Chinese Communist Party. They just ran it the way that they wanted to. Just let them go ahead, you know, with complaining about misinformation and all that kind of thing. Didn't bother to look there. There might be some misinformation there, right? Trusting the PLA with our vaccine supply. Like, there's starting to see a pattern. The things, you know, it admires about the China for its basic dictatorship and all that. How much do we pay for the vaccines? We don't know. Yeah, and I think it's interesting that he presided over a time in Canadian history when there was like a frightening degree of censorship of contrary opinions on a lot of different issues, and including how to respond to COVID. Like, in science, there's dissent. That's what it's all about. You can't have... Well, what you had was a kind of an artificial consensus in the medical community. The Great Barrington Declaration, there are a lot of people were signing up for that until it started to get a bad name in the press. So politics influenced scientific opinion. That's really not good. And Trudeau presided over that time in Canada. Yeah. I think his critics are onto something.